Good evening, everyone. Apologize for starting the meeting a little bit late. Current time is 5:10. I want to welcome everybody to the meeting of the Temple City Council for May 19th, 2022. Please rise as Mayor Pro Tem Judy Morales leads us in the invocation, followed by the pledge, which will be led by City Secretary Jana Lou Ellen.
Join me, please. Oh God, you are so good and faithful and gracious, and you have blessed us beyond measure. We want to thank you for every day's blessings, and let us not ever take you for granted. Thank you for our families, our friends, our jobs, and our neighbors. Thank you for the freedom to attend church and public meetings and the many relationships we enjoy. Thank you for the things you're doing in our hearts and in our lives. We are grateful that by the power of your Holy Spirit, we're much different today than years ago. And it is because of your power at work in each one of us, we are continuously being transformed into your image. As we meet today, Father, we ask your blessings on the people who are here today and who have been called to lead a community in which we live, work, and play. Help us as leaders to not ask first, how do we fix things, but what do we need to learn? How might we make and need things to change, and to whom do we need to listen? Grant us the wisdom and courage to know and to do what is right, good, and true. May we speak out when it is time to speak out and listen, patient when it is time to listen. May we always be guided by the spirit of community, by the spirit of justice, and the spirit of your love. Look upon our nation and city leaders, our mayor, our city council, city staff, our police, our fire, our first responders, and all those who truly have a heart of service. Bless each one of them today, Father. We ask for healing in our city, community, and nation, in our world. So many people are suffering in a world of hurt, so let them be comforted, especially the many people in Ukraine. Take charge and destroy the enemies like Satan and Putin. We pray for healing and wisdom for our leaders as they strive to achieve peace and order. And lastly, Father, we pray that forgiveness, faith, unity, and love may prevail. Help each one of us be an instrument of your love and your peace. Help us to bring prosperity and hope where there is poverty and despair. May you bless our hearts with your love and peace and joy, and resolve the issues that affect us all. We love and adore you, Father, with all our hearts, and we are overflowing with gratitude for all your blessings. We love you. We ask all this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ladies. Now I'll move on to the public comments section of tonight's agenda. Citizens who desire to address the council on any matter may do so. We ask that you step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. We ask you please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes, and no discussion or final action will be taken by the council. We have two that have signed up. So first we'll hear from Mr. David Rowe.
Hello.
Thanks, sir.
We got four, so maybe
That's all right.
you can peek over each other.
There you go.
Got one, I'll keep you after the meeting.
All right. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I came again with the problems I've had with the code and things revolving around it. On the first page, I made a video and they wouldn't let me process it somehow where I could do it. I guess I could bring it back in 2 weeks when it's available under whatever kind of rules. The first page on here is what I tried for 5 years to get the city to recognize each year it would be this bad. And code didn't apply to it. And I really think codes functioning at the level that somebody thinks is right. Page 2 is just one in the alley that what happens in the alley. And page 3, my alley is pretty much cleared now. This place here is what's called beggar lights, stick tights. I don't know if y'all all know what, when you go out in the weeds with socks on and they all come back covered with little bitty stickers. That's what that is. And it's been that way all year and nobody's cut it. And this is city property and the city says, we're not going to do the city, maintain the city alleys. And I don't understand that. I sent a notice, a text out to all the board members, asking them a yes or no question. Did they agree with that or not abiding by what the code says on the city property? None of you answered me. I don't know. Jessica did answer and she said, whatever the mayor and the Transform Temple person says, that's what goes. I thought all of you would want to say how you felt about that. The other pictures, I think picture number 6, that was all piled up in the alley between 39th and 37th. And there's others along there that's bad. But it was kind of funny. I went by the next day and there was none there. But it was across the alley on the other side of the alley, piled up in a pile. The city doesn't have any way of doing that. The trash truck comes by and dumps the trash. That's good, works good. Why can't they say when there's something been there for 4 cycles around, call whoever, and you need somebody that can go address these things instead of leaving them there till they rot. A lot of it's rental property. The final page, that building was there when the people bought it and built 2 duplexes on that property. And that building was in terrible shape. There was a hole in the roof when they bought the place. And I reported that and they said they went and looked at it and the guy has to get a permit to tear it down. I just think it's, if the grass is legal 9 inches tall is what the code says, and the alley is 3 foot tall, doesn't make any sense to me that the city won't maintain city property. That's all I have at the time.
Thank you, sir. Jacqueline Hale.
I apologize, we need to sign up for public comment.
Oh, now you have to say something.
You just did.
Okay. Yeah. Your comment is no thanks, right? No, very good. That's okay. That you're not the first person.
She's with our bond council, Mayor.
Okay. All right. Okay, very good. So let's move on to the next item, which is to administer the oath of office for newly elected council members. That would be Councilmember Walker and Councilmember Williams.
Step forward.
Am I? Okay, good. It's working.
You are.
Well, we're one at a time. And you are place 1, District 1, so
Please raise your right hand. And speak into the microphone. I, Jessica Walker,
I, Jessica Walker,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of the office of Council Member District 1
the office of the council member District 1
Sounded good to me.
and will to the best of my ability
and will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution
the
and
Constitution
the laws of the state.
and the laws of the state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Yeah, you did.
See you again. You were here last time too, so wonderful. Please raise your right hand. I, Wendell Williams,
I, Wendell Williams,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of the office of council member District 4
of the office of council member District 4
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution
the Constitution
and the laws of this state.
of the laws of this state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. The gang's all back.
Yeah.
So,
The band's back together.
right.
Bands back together, huh?
All right, very good. Next item is labeled as bond items. It's the first and final reading and public hearing to consider adopting a fourth supplemental ordinance to the master ordinance establishing the city of Temple, Texas reinvestment zone number 1 tax increment revenue financing program to authorize the issuance of city of Temple, Texas reinvestment zone number 1 tax increment revenue bonds series 2022A and taxable series 2022B. Ms. Bernard.
Yes, Mayor, if you would like, and Kathy's okay with it, if you could read both of them.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
Now, bond items, and that'll give them time to pull up my presentation too.
All right. And item 5 reads to consider adopting a resolution authorizing proceeding with the issuance of City of Temple, Texas combination tax and revenue certificates of obligation series 2022 and further directing the publication of notice of intention to issue certificates of obligation and other matters related to the issuance.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. The first item is essentially what I call a delegation ordinance related to, and it gives the parameters of the delegation. This ordinance will designate the Director of Finance or, in her absence, the city manager as the pricing officer to execute pricing certificates and finalize pricing within parameters defined in the ordinance. And just a highlight of the parameters, the not to exceed par for these certificates would be 40 million. The source of payback is reinvestment zone number 1 revenues, not a tax pledge, but from the revenues of the zone. Term in years is 25 years, maximum maturity not to go past August 1 of 2048. And the type of sale is allowed either negotiated, competitive, or private placement based on advice from the FA at the time, what would be the best selection there. Also, the delegation term ends, it's good for a year and would end May 19th, 2023. Just quickly to go over the projects included in this issue. It's project funds needed are 35 million. There's also an amount to fund a reserve fund out of proceeds. The main project on that list is the outer loop construction from I-35 to Windland with the BNSF flyover and utilities, close to $23.8 million. And then a water line and wastewater extension in the North Industrial Park. And then we do have added a contingency here just to make sure with current construction pricing that we have adequate funds to complete that loop, outer loop. And then, as I mentioned, the reserve for the debt service of $3.3 million. That's based on the maximum annual debt service for that issue. And again, the not to exceed amount is 40 million, but the amount needed for project funds and reserve fund is right around 38.3 million estimated. And the difference is just the cushion between now and the time when we issue, just to make sure we could fit within our project needs and delegation parameters. Just quickly, a timeline of events. We're here today. The city council considers an ordinance for the sale of the TERS bonds. In the future, we will be looking at updating our bond rating. And then also in the future, between now and May 19th of 2023 is when we look at pricing and award and closing. Any questions on that one? Do you have there's another presentation? As the pictures that went by with us tonight is Dan Wegmiller with Specialized Public Finance. His Cole, I know your last name, with Dan's office also, and then Jacqueline Hale in the back with our bond counsel. The next item is the notice of intent to issue combination tax and revenue certificates of obligation series 2022. Just a summary of what this resolution covers. It's directing publication for notice of intent to issue that defines the maximum amount and purpose, the manner in which the COs will be paid, which I'll go over in just a few minutes in the table, and then the time and place of the ordinance authorizing the issue, which is scheduled for July 7th of 2022. In addition, it authorizes the Director of Finance, the financial advisor, and bond counsel to prepare the necessary bond and offering documents to complete the sale and include making application to appropriate rating agencies. As you see for the CIP for mobility, drainage, facilities, and public safety, that amount, it totals 45.770 is the not to exceed amount. You can see that each category on the mobility transportation, the payback source is an INS tax pledge and the term 20 years, and the existing tax rate that was adopted in August of last year supports this issue. Current drainage fees support the drainage COs, CIP facilities, close to 3.3 million. That is a tax pledge, and they are amortized depending on the improvement. They could be less than 20 years. And then public safety COs of 12.4 million, and that is a INS tax pledge. And again, that is in the existing tax rate. And then at the bottom is an amount for reinvestment zone. COs related to reinvestment zone CIP projects for a not to exceed amount of 56 million. And the payback for that is current and future tax increment revenues. The term in years is 25 years. I won't go through all these projects, but here shows the mobility of 28.5 million. Construction funding for the third and fourth phase of Kegley Road. Pretty big investment into our pavement preservation and reconstruction of 4.5 million. As you can see on down the list, I won't go through those. Drainage improvements, it includes adding additional funds based on updated OPCs to 4 projects. And then funding a contingency for a total of 1.58 million. Capital improvement program facilities is a parks admin maintenance building rebuild. And then some major roof replacements and HVAC upgrades. And a contingency totaling 3.3 million, close to 3.3 million. Public safety includes the construction of the animal shelter expansion, fire training skills pad, the simulation shoot house, upgrade, replace a fire truck, close to $1.4 million. Fire training, burn props for the training assistant, training facility, and then alerting systems and contingency for a total of $12.4 million. Capital improvement for the reinvestment zone, again, not to exceed amount of 56 million. We do have a contingency of 4.4 million. The majority of these projects relate to water and wastewater improvements within the reinvestment zone. There is also some improvements for the airport, including additional funding for the FBO center and parking. Just a quick note on the 22 through 28 business plan. The city continues to implement the largest capital improvement program in the history of the community. And the financing plan recommends significant funding to, number one, invest in our infrastructure and systems. Two, plan for our design, construct, and maintain high-quality facilities, expand our drainage improvement needs. And our plan in financing those is a phased approach, multi-year plan, design and right-of-way acquisitions funded first, construction funded once the design is complete. And the goals of the phased approach: minimize and stabilize the tax rate impact, maximize the opportunity for the tax base to grow, allows ability to balance debt amortization, and always align funding with project readiness. It's a tentative timeline of events. Here we are tonight with the resolution directing publication. First notice to publish on May 22nd, second, May 28th. The week beginning in June, we'll begin the rating and offering documents, receive our rating in late June, and come back to the city council on July 7th for you to consider authorizing the sale of the COs and then actually receiving proceeds on Thursday, July 28th. That concludes both presentations. As I mentioned, Dan Wedmiller and Jacqueline are here. If you have questions, they could answer related to those. A lot of information, but I'm sure they can answer any question.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Bernard. Council, any questions for Ms. Bernard or for bond counsel? Nothing?
Well, I do have one question. How low is the interest rate going to be?
Lock it in.
It'll be different today than next week.
You got it. You got it.
Very good. Okay, item 4 is subject to a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on item 4 may do so. We just ask that you step to the podium and state your name and address for the record, or lift your hand on the virtual platform. No one on the platform? Anybody in the audience? All right, very good. Then council, I will close the public hearing on item 4 and entertain a motion on item 4.
I'll make a motion to approve item 4.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Councilmember Walker. We have a second by Councilmember Long. Council, please cast your vote. Item 4 passes 5 votes to 0. Moving on to item 5, we've already received the presentation on that. Council, I'll entertain a motion on item 5.
I'll make a motion for approval.
I'll second that motion.
Have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Morales and a second by Councilmember Williams. Council, please cast your vote. Item 5 passes 5 votes to 0. I am proud to be the mayor of a town that is willing to work hard and to keep up with the infrastructure needs. Those are expensive items, and I'm proud that we do those things, and hopefully we're at least keeping up, right, and not falling behind. So thank you all, council, for approving that. Staff, thank you for working hard to put those items together. Dan, thank you for your team to help us make it all work. Very much appreciated. All right, moving on to item 5 is the consent agenda. All items listed under this section are to be considered routine by the city council and may be enacted in one motion. If discussion is desired by anyone on the council, we can remove that item and consider it separately. Council, we talked in workshop that we would be removing item D from the consent agenda. So just know that. Is there anything else, council, that you'd like to pull before we vote? All right. Then I'll entertain a motion on items 6A through 6P minus 6D.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda item 6A through 6P, again minus 6D.
Second it.
We have a motion by Councilmember Long. We have a second by Councilmember Walker. Council, please cast your vote. Item 6A through P minus D passes 5 votes to 0. Moving on to item 6D is to consider adopting a resolution authorizing a lease agreement with WC&R LLC of Austin for the lease of commercial hangars numbers 20 and 26 at the Drawn Miller Central Texas Regional Airport. Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item is on your agenda today. We have 2 hangars at the airport that we refer to as our commercial hangars, both over 45,000 square feet in size that include hangar space as well as office space. We did have an appraisal completed by Airport and Aviation Proposals that provided a proposed price per square foot per year that you can see here if we received a lease on both hangars or the individual hangars themselves. We have received a proposed long-term lease from WC&R LLC to lease both of the commercial hangars. The purpose would be for aircraft hangaring and a majority, 51% of aeronautical business operations. It is a long-term lease proposal of 30 years with 2 5-year renewals with a rental rate adjustment every 5 years and a periodic business review where every 5 years we would review the business operations and ensure that the fuel usage is 5,000 gallons or more per month. We are recommending some proposed changes that you have in your packet as it relates to 4 different items. We are proposing to change the use from a majority of 51% to 70% aeronautical business operations. We are also recommending to reduce the initial term to 20 years with 2 10-year renewals. We'd like to recommend that the rental rate be adjusted every 5 years according to the market rate, which would be determined by an appraisal or the CPI, whichever is greater, and have a periodic business review every 2.5 years versus 5 years. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Thank you.
Council, any questions? All right, then if there being none, I will entertain a motion on item 6D.
Mr. Mayor, I know that the Airport Advisory Board spent a good deal of time and effort in looking at this and making some suggestions and along with staff recommendations. I'd like to move that we adopt the lease with the changes that Ms. Smith just showed us, with one little tweak to that. On the CIP, give the city the ability to negotiate a ceiling and a floor on the CIP if they want to do that with the leasee. With that minor little change to those proposals, I'd make the motion we approve the resolution.
I'll make a second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Williams. We have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Morales. Council, please cast your vote. Item 6D passes 5 votes to 0. The next item is a second and final reading to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a rezoning from general retail to commercial zoning district on 1.494 plus or minus acres in the city of Temple, Bell County, addressed as 21915 Southeast HK Dodge and Loop. Mr. Chandler.
And thank you, Mayor and Council. And I believe this is just to be heard for voting purposes. And so I'm happy to pull up the presentation if needed, but nothing has changed since the first one.
Thank you, sir. Council, anybody need a presentation? Or are you prepared to move forward? All right, and I'll entertain a motion on item 7.
Well, the motion on Item 7 is, was presented in the past to the council by Mr. Chandler.
I'll second it.
You have a motion by Councilmember Long, a second by Councilmember Walker. Council, please cast your vote. Item 7 passes 4 votes yes, 0 votes no, and 1 abstention. Item 8 is the final reading to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a rezoning request from agriculture to single family 3 on 23.46 plus or minus acres in the city of Temple, Bell County, Texas, addressed as 220 North 36th Street. Mr. Chandler.
All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is going to be a really brief presentation. We had significant discussion at first reading. There were some concerns about single family 3 and the minimum lot size of 4,000 square feet. We've gone back to the developer, the applicant, and the engineer. Tyler Freeze is here in case you have any additional questions. Of course, this is the property at North 36th Street, northeast part of town, 23.46 acres. And you'll recall this is the concept residential layout that had been presented. And in talking to the developer, they are in agreement to add a planned development district to this zoning with a base zoning of single family 2 rather than single family 3, because that allows a minimum of 5,000 square foot lots instead of the 4,000. And so here are the conditions that have been discussed with the applicant and agreed upon. Substantial compliance with the concept plan here with some caveats that we'll get to. The single family 2 regulations of the 5,000 square foot lot size minimum, but also clarifying the front setback of 20 feet as opposed to 15, which is allowed in single family 3. They didn't want to go any closer to the street. They didn't need that. Allowing single family 3 lot widths. So that was one of the main reasons they wanted single family 3 originally. And so if we have that as a condition and allow that, then they're in agreement, and staff recommends that as well. Also, the trail connectivity to Pruitt Park that the city obviously recently invested in, and they're in agreement to that. Makes a lot of sense for their neighborhood to connect to that green space. And then the last one, that the director of planning may approve minor modifications to the city council approved concept plan, including related to lot configuration changes due to easement, which you see the 50-foot gas easement running through the middle, and floodplain. And so you can see the crosshatched area on the right, which is actually northern part of the 23.46 acres. And so they're in agreement with that. And so that concludes my presentation. Happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler. Council, any questions? Appreciate the work that your office did in hearing council's concerns and moving
Sure.
forward with those.
And thank you to Mr. Freeze and his client as well. So VJ. So yeah, appreciate their coordination on that.
Very good. Council, if there are no further questions, I'll entertain a motion on item 8.
Mr. Mayor, I move for adoption of the rezoning request as outlined in item 8, the restrictions and requirements that Mr. Chandler outlined as well.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Williams and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Morales. Please cast your vote. Item 8 passes 5 votes to 0. Congratulations. Thank you for your investment. Moving on to item 9 is a first reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a rezoning from single family 1 to central area on 1± acres in the city of Temple, Bell County, Texas. Address is 204 North 7th Street. Mr. Chandler.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. And so this is a rezoning request from single family 1 to central area zoning district. And so here you can see that the property is located at the northwest corner of North 7th Street and Barton Avenue. And so looking at the surrounding zoning, you can see that single family 1 is located throughout that block, with the exception of neighborhood service property that is on the other side of the alley to the west, and then central area zoning to the east and to the south. And I think it's important to note that there is an interesting zoning history for this piece of property. It actually was previously zoned central area, was also zoned multifamily 2, but rezoned to single family 1, and then the neighborhood service property behind it in 2009. So that's a property is for sale, and so the buyer has requested the rezoning to maximize some of the opportunities on the piece of property, which includes for on-street parking, allowing that, which central area zoning, you may recall, has exemptions related to the parking ratio requirements, especially for the downtown core. But as we get out into the neighborhoods, that can be problematic. And so we do have concerns with central area at this location. That entire block is, as we mentioned, single family 1 zoned and used for residential purposes. However, because of its location at the corner and because of the fact that they do have some parking to the rear, and also we'll show you the future development plan, I think calls this as downtown transitional, that office 1 would be appropriate. And we'll get into the details of that in a second. And also the fact that CA allows alcohol sales by right. So, breweries and tap rooms like Fox Dog across the street, that is zoned central area. It's appropriate there. They have additional parking. They also have a partnership with the architecture firm, the MRB group, adjacent to it for additional parking needs. So looking at the land use table and comparing these different zoning districts, I think it's really important to point out that office 1, of course, in addition to allowing offices, includes some other low traffic generating service type uses. Also, I wanted to point out that on the table, it shows credit access business is allowed in O1, but just keep in mind there are distance requirements that would not allow for that use to be located here if O1 is ultimately approved. And lastly, I think it's important to note that the single family use, the existing use, would also still be allowed in office 1. I believe that they asked some questions about whether it could be used as a short-term rental, and according to our current code, absolutely could be for that residential purpose. And so looking at the surrounding properties, just with a little more detail, you can see I referenced Fox Dog Tap Room and Coffee across the street. That is just open right now on Fridays and Saturdays. And actually a neighbor had expressed concern at planning and zoning that they did not want to see the replication of a use like that at this location. And of course, they have additional parking that we mentioned, and they're only open 2 days a week. So something to consider. And looking at the comprehensive plan, and so it actually is not consistent with the downtown core, and this is something that we've taken note of to consider amending. Downtown transition is probably more appropriate for this location, and that is more consistent with what the neighborhood plan, which, as you all know, we do the neighborhood plans and take a closer look at land use and thoroughfare plan and then make adjustments accordingly. Thoroughfare plan shows Barton and 7th are both local streets. There are no trails proposed in this location on the Trails Master Plan. And the downtown district, West End sub-district with a neighborhood plan does also recommend adaptive reuse of existing residential buildings for harmonious transition, such as professional services with low traffic generation, which Office 1 would comply with. And so here on the top left, you can see it's a small house, probably about an 80-year-old house. And then the adjacent single-family home to the north on that side of the street. And then bottom left, you can see the view from Barton Avenue of that property. And then the neighboring neighborhood service property to the west, which is also a bigger lot. That's neighborhood service, which allows additional retail, but it's a much bigger lot than this is. And it's already zoned that. And then just looking across the street, Fox Dog that we referenced, and then the MRB group, and then the mid-rise apartment complex, and then some other non-residential on the south side of Barton. And so 12 notices were sent out to property owners within 200 feet. And 3 owners responded, 2 in favor, and then 1 in opposition. And so the opposition is to the southeast. And so the woman who spoke at P&Z is actually just outside of the 200-foot boundary, and she was very opposed. So staff recommends disapproval of the CA request, but approval of Office 1. And at the April 18th meeting, Planning and Zoning Commission voted 3-2 to recommend approval per staff recommendation. So obviously a split vote. My understanding is that one of the P&Z members wanted to allow the CA request, and the other didn't want to see this change from residential at all. So happy to answer any questions. And I don't see the applicant, and perhaps the applicant is online if there are questions for him.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions for Mr.
Frank,
Chairman?
could you clarify what kind of business are they planning to put in there?
Don't know. They've asked some questions, but ultimately, they don't have a specific business plan that they've communicated to us. I think it's an investment property. And they had asked about short-term rentals, so that would be an option, but I don't know the plans.
Short-term rental is allowed in an office rezoning?
Yes, because at the way our code is quite frankly silent on short-term rentals right now.
Okay.
It's really the residential use is allowed, and of course that's the existing one, and so short-term rentals would apply.
And I think you were addressing this, and my mind might have wandered a little bit, and I apologize.
Sure.
If you go back to the slides where you show the block and where this is. Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
So that block is in a group of blocks that are zoned differently, central area.
Yes, sir.
And this is a single family with one neighborhood services and this individual wanting to do something different.
Yes, sir.
Are we
That's exactly
looking
true.
at rezoning that entire block to bring it into compliance with what else is going on around there? Is that what you were
No,
kind of
sir.
talking towards?
No, sir. In fact, I would discourage that.
So
This is existing residential on this side of the street,
okay,
and and with neighbor input, are not proposing to encroach into, additional into the neighborhood, except for this piece of property. It's at a corner.
But yeah, both
has
of those, the
parking,
neighborhood services and this one are at the end of the block on the
Right.
corner.
Because we're so focused on encouraging additional residential in the downtown area. We certainly wouldn't want to encroach on existing single family where we don't think it's appropriate.
Okay, you answered my question.
But
Thank you.
office one could still include single family. one,
Yes, ma'am.
correct? Okay. Yeah, there's not much buffer between that house and the next.
No,
And
it's a small lot.
Yeah, could be really disruptive, I think.
Brian, I don't represent this neighborhood and have no particular feel in that sense. But in District 3, I am getting calls from some of the newer subdivisions where investors are buying single-family houses and then doing short-term rentals because we don't have any control over this at
Mhm.
this point. And there are lots of problems,
Mhm.
lots of problems. So all I can say is, I hope we can think through this before we develop more problems along those lines with parking and just general confusion and
Sure.
not mayhem exactly, but parties that are out of control, people calling the police all the time that are permanent residents, that kind of thing.
Sure, understood. And we've made note of that to look at that with future Unified Development Code rewrite.
Yes,
With, keep it in mind that in downtown, the downtown area, we have no overnight accommodations that
I
are
know.
not
I understand.
technically short-term rentals. So
The
we'd
concept-
actually encourage it. And
I agree
it-
completely, but I would
yes.
hope that we could get some boundaries with it.
yes,
Could you go back to the screen that shows the agreements and disagreements? The responses. Okay, 12 owners, 3 owners responded, 2 in favor, and they had no relationship to the property. They aren't investors or anything like that, to your
In favor,
knowledge.
representing 4
Yeah.
properties.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, not to my knowledge.
Can you give us the city's definition of a short-term rental or the industry's definition of short-term rental?
Sure. So a short-term rental would be somebody renting the house for, just vacation purposes. Like an
One night,
Airbnb,
3 nights.
Airbnb
Yep.
essentially. And so it might be for a week or maybe even 2 weeks at a time, but it's not a long-term month-to-month
Mhm.
type of a rental. It's typically for vacation purposes.
Who would monitor that?
And just to be clear, we don't have a definition because we don't have anything in our code that addresses it. So Brian's answer
why I
was just
said
in
industry-
general. Yes, I just
industry
wanted to be clear.
definition.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's probably not a definition that you'd want in our code.
Well, it was noted that there's no residential units to speak of downtown now. We're trying to, continue to encourage downtown redevelopment. We're trying to encourage, an after 5 downtown redevelopment, right? Recreational type activities versus office activities. And I don't know, this, to me, this is it's within walking distance of downtown, which is what we're trying to encourage. So in many ways, not to allow zoning that would allow for short-term rentals is in many ways working against what we're trying to accomplish downtown.
Keep in mind that short-term rentals would be allowed in single-family 1, office 1, or central area. And so it's, if short-term rentals are something that you're interested in for this area, regardless, it would be allowed on this piece of property.
So going back to the P and Z thoughts,
Yes. So the 2 against, the information that they gave at the dais at that meeting is that 1 was concerned about even just allowing the office 1, that encroachment into that residential side of the block. And the other one expressed an interest in allowing the central area request by the applicant.
which goes along with the staff recommendation.
Well, the staff's recommendations for the office one. So, yeah,
Right,
so
sorry.
either way, and those two were in disagreement with staff's recommendation.
I
Yes.
think Fox Dog is unique in that they partner with MRB. So
Yes.
most of their parking is not on the street. It's in a parking lot. I could see that would be an issue, especially at that corner, to have a number of cars. So limiting it to office one, I think would alleviate a lot of
Right.
that traffic.
But as Brian and Brent are both pointing out, right now, it's in SF1. If you want to buy the house as an investor and rent it as a short-term rental, you can do it. So,
But I couldn't turn it into a law office,
no,
but you could in office one. So it's an opportunity
Right,
to, to have
exactly.
some kind of business with low number of vehicles.
right, low impact.
Yeah.
So you know how I love those charts and tables, right? So to clarify,
One more time.
one more time. SF1 allows short-term rentals. Office allows or does not allow.
Does allow
Allow.
short-term rentals. And actually, I won't go back to that table because
Thank you.
short-term rentals is
It's
not even
the
on. there.
That stuff makes my
It
eyes
just
cross.
I know.
Very good. Okay. Council, any more thoughts on this one? All right, if there are no additional thoughts, I'll entertain a motion on. Pardon? Oh, sorry. Yep. This item 9, is subject to a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak, please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record, or raise your hand on the virtual platform. Nothing? All right. I'll close the public hearing, being there's no one wishing to speak, and entertain a motion on item 9.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to, you're gonna have to put the language back up if y'all
Oh.
don't mind, because it's a little tricky.
Okay, you could, okay, never mind. I'll let you look at the slide. There you go.
Yes.
Right there.
So I would like to make a motion to disapproval of rezoning from SF1 to CA and approval of rezoning to Office 1.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Councilmember Walker, a second by Councilmember Long. Council, please cast your vote on item 9. Item 9 passes 3 yeses, 2 nos. Moving on to item 10 is to consider adopting an ordinance approving the Temple Parks and Recreation Department's youth program standards of care and approving the 2021 annual report. Mr. Hemker.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, City Leadership, and audience members. Coming before you tonight for an annual process that we have to take place in approving our childcare standards for our after-school program and what we use for our summer camp programs as well. I've got a couple of our staff members in the audience tonight. I want to introduce Belinda Garcia. She's over our zone after-school program and summer camp right now. Miranda Malloy, she formerly ran that after-school program, but she's also very involved with our camps out at Wilson Park Rec Center. And Mike Mayfield, who's one of our 2 division directors who supervises these programs as well. These guys are the ones that really do the execution of those programs and help us get them going. Annually, we have to bring this standards of care ordinance to you for approval because the municipalities from Texas Human Resources Code 420401 establishes requirements to allow municipalities to be exempt from having childcare licensing standards. And this is pretty common across a lot of cities across the state who run after-school programs, so they don't have to go through daycare licensing in general. These regulations don't apply to all government agencies. These are going to be specific to us, these childcare standards. Annually, this has to come before. you guys, because of the Family Protective Services require it, to adopt it on an annual basis. In the past, we have brought this to you in January. Earlier tonight, you guys approved the interlocal agreements for a 2-year period with both ISDs on the consent agenda. And we really appreciate that. And what we have been doing is trying to align that process along with the childcare standards. So as we work through things, both from a budgetary standpoint and program expansion, but also if we have to change our rules on how we operate these programs, we can do that in preparation for the upcoming school years for both of those ISDs. Now, originally I thought we could do this update on a 2-year basis as well, but in working with legal, we do have to do this on an annual basis. So every year we'll come back about this time in May for the approval of this. But thanks to the agreement on the other 2 items, that'll be every 2 years to help us on our planning aspects. In our ordinance, we do address the staffing ratios that we won't exceed a 1 leader to 20 children in the program. The program does have a rate, age ranges from 5 to 13. We have minimum staff qualifications in there as well. And then we also put timelines and mechanisms in to enforce the school districts. Uh-oh, did I hit the wrong button? Something disappeared from there. I don't know. Sorry, no worries. Here, these bullets represent some of the language. The orange bullet is just a nice deal. We do background checks. We work with our HR department through the hiring process to make sure that both when we're hiring staff, they have those minimum qualifications, but they also pass those and they don't have any inappropriate activities with children or family violence and things like that. We also certify our staff in first aid and CPR, and then they have continual training on a monthly basis as well, and or training at the beginning of the year and throughout the year when it's the after school program. And they're also provided a training manual at the beginning of their season or beginning of the school year. That's what the 3rd bullet kind of captures there. And the same manual is used for both our zone after school program as well as our summer camp programs that are general in nature. In turn, we also provide a manual of standards that we follow to our parents. This is the mandatory requirement that they have to understand that we don't follow state licensing procedures. We have our own, which you guys are approving this evening. They also talk about the registration dates and the requirements for giving us information about their children, health, any concerns. Now, this also, as an annual report, also helps us to bring it and shift it from January to now, because generally these programs work on a school year basis and then summer. So it's really the start of the programs start in August. So it does carry over from a fiscal year standpoint, but it more aligns with how we deliver the programs. This current school year that we are in, we offer the program at 6 after-school sites. Yeah, I'm not sure why. And so we are currently at 1 Temple site and 5 Belton ISD sites. On the next slide, I'll break that down a little bit as well. But the other parts of our programs are our camps. So when school is out, we offer a program as well. And we do that both through mini camps, but we also do it at Gober, Wilson Park Rec Center as well. Since this is the annual report, we're going to show you last year's numbers as we were rising back after the pandemic. Our after-school numbers were down to 152 kids. This year, we are up to 203, and these are unique registrations. So if Johnny signs up for August and September, mom and dad may have found other care for them come October. That unique person's out and the next one is in. So we're serving 203 kiddos in the program currently through this current year. It does show on this chart the 4 or 3 sites at Temple ISD, and some of the changes that have occurred. Their registration over the past few years has continually gone down due to the programs that they are offering and more in the way of after-school tutoring. Last year, when they approached us to try to team up on some things, they had a grant program that was going to ramp up higher than what they had done. They thought they were going to be able to partner with us, and we were going to supplement their kids. Those kids would come to us and then essentially leave our program and go over to the tutoring and then come back to us throughout the day. We did not get the minimum registrations that we were looking for those 3 sites, which we were looking for no less than 15 kiddos at those sites in order to be able to staff it. In the previous school year, we took those same 3 sites that have the zeros this year, and we bused them from the sites over to Wilson Park Rec Center to make sure that they had some level of care. This year, because TISD had their other programs in place, those kids were still getting care that had originally registered with us and then went to those programs. By doing the 2-year agreement that we've asked for, it's going to help us plan for other alternatives going in. So this coming fall, when we open our registration, we are still going back to open registration for all 4 sites. And hopefully we'll get those registrations and be able to staff them as well. The other things that we do is show you the camp numbers. Last summer, we had 436 unique kids. We are still registering for this summer's camps. And so we're right now, as of 2 days ago, or yesterday, 403. So this is slightly updated than what was in your packet, because I think the original number we put in there was from the 5th when we submitted this. But summer camp registration, Camp Discovery and Camp Pathfinder, that's our all-day generalist camp that Ms. Garcia runs for us at a Belton ISD site. And Miranda and her team at Wilson Park Rec Center actually do all-day camps, but they're in specialty in nature, whether it's arts, STEM type things, or even sports camps. There's still all-day care. It's in a whole different format than the general all-day camp that is at Pathfinder and Discovery. So those are the unique things. That's kind of how we've been shifting some of our service delivery. Last year, we did not have any scholarships available, but we do want to make sure that folks understand that if somebody is having trouble and cannot attend one of our programs due to financial hardship, we do have the ability to serve them. And what we have done over the last couple of years is mostly set up payment plans. Instead of having to pay a full month up front, we've worked with them to break those up in multiple payments. That's been the general deal, but we do have the ability to scholarship kiddos if that's necessary. We just haven't had that request. Staff is recommending that you all please adopt the child care standards for 22-23. We have no changes in next year's deal, and that's what we're recommending. And as I mentioned earlier, this time of year is aligning for the agreements, because the school districts like to do that at the end of their fiscal year going into the next one. And so we're really working with them as well. Any questions?
Very good. Those are good programs. Gives parents the outlets that they need to continue to, do their work. School doesn't always align with work. So appreciate the city stepping in. Council, any questions for Mr. Hemker about that? Anything at all?
No, thank you 3 for doing what you do. We greatly appreciate you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Hemker.
Thank you.
I'll open the public hearing on this item. Ask you please step to the podium or raise your hand on the platform if you'd like to be heard. There being none, I'll entertain a motion on item 10.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Second that motion.
Have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Morales, second by Councilmember Long. Council, please cast your vote. Item 10 passes 5 votes to 0. Moving on to item 11 is to consider adopting a resolution authorizing a first amendment to the 2005 airport lease agreement with James R. Fikes, DBA JF Air Traffic, Inc. for hangar number 10A at the Drawn Miller Central Texas Regional Airport.
Mayor Davis, this is on the regular agenda for voting purposes. We'd be happy to do a presentation, but that's the primary reason that we put it on the regular agenda.
Very good. Thank you. Council, anyone need a presentation?
No.
All right. Then I will entertain a motion on item 11.
I'll make a motion to approve item 11.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Walker. We have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Morales. Council, please cast your vote. Item 11 passes with 4 votes yes, 0 votes no, and 1 abstention. Item 12 is to consider adopting a resolution authorizing the purchase of 2 medium-sized 4x4 sport utility vehicles from Lake Country Chevrolet of Jasper for an estimated amount of $66,649.50. Ms. Matke.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As discussed briefly at council workshop, this is a follow-up item on your March 22nd council consent agenda. You did authorize the purchase of these vehicles to an out-of-town vendor, and there was not a local preference option available because the local vendor was not within 5% of that bidder. That low bidder has backed out. They said that they cannot keep their price firm and proceed with acceptance of the purchase order. So we're now coming back to you with a low bidder. And it also gives us the ability to consider a local preference. So per your local preference policy, we will recommend as staff the low bidder. However, you have the option to consider the best combination of price and additional economic development opportunities in consideration of the local bid. So we did, as summary, we did receive competitive sealed bids on March 22nd for various vehicles. One of the bids was for 2 medium-sized all-wheel drive SUVs for code compliance. You did award on April 21st. I think it was actually, it was April 21st. The low bidder, Randall Reed's Planet Ford's 635 of Garland. However, Randall Reed was not able to honor his bid once we issued the purchase order. So the new low bidder for the bid is Lake Country Chevrolet of Jasper. And there is a local preference option with Don Wrangler Chevrolet of Temple. And I think okay. So it is the staff recommendation to award the purchase to Lake Country Chevrolet in the amount of $66,649. However, you do have for consideration a local preference option to Don Wrangler Chevrolet for $68,110. That is a difference of $1,460.50 or 2.19% difference. A photo of both vendors are bidding the same vehicle. It's a 2023 Chevrolet Traverse, photo shown at the bottom of the screen. So you have options, and I believe you have a handout that Jana gave you. You can do not take the local preference. That's option 1, or you can award the local preference option to Don Wrangler Chevrolet at an incremental additional cost of $1,460.50. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Matke. Council, any questions for Ms. Matke?
I do have a question. Is the delivery time with both vendors essentially the same?
I do not, I've got to believe that it is because they're all coming from basically the same place, and it's the manufacturing that's holding it up.
Council, anything else? Thank you, Ms. Matke. I'll entertain a motion on item 12. You have the special motion language at your seat.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that in recognizing that Don Wrangler Chevrolet of Temple is a local vendor that offers the city the best combination of price and additional economic development opportunities under the city's local preference policy. I make a motion to purchase 2 medium-sized 4x4 sports utility vehicles from Don Wrangler Chevrolet in the amount of $68,110.
Second that motion.
We have a motion by Councilmember Williams. We have a second by Councilmember Long. Council, please cast your vote. Item 5 passes 5 votes to 0. Item 13 reads to consider adopting a resolution electing a mayor pro tem for the city of Temple. I have spoken with the other council members, and you're up again. So,
Thank you.
I called all of them before I asked you. So they said if she'll keep doing it, let her do it. So
Thank you all.
thank you for
I'm
that.
honored.
We said it more gracefully than that.
Yeah.
Jessica didn't.
Certainly did.
Very good. And thank y'all. And Judy, thank you for your willingness to continue to serve. So, council, if there are no further comments, then I'll entertain a motion for approval on item 13.
Mayor, gracefully, we will make a motion to approve Mayor Pro Tem Morales continuing as Mayor Pro Tem Morales.
I'll second that.
I'll vote for it.
I forgot to tell you all, she wants $300 from each of you. So,
No, it's the other, it's the other way around. We don't want
Yeah.
300 for it.
very good. So we have a motion by Councilmember Long. We have a second by Councilmember Walker. Council, please cast your vote.
No, I'm locked up.
Could abstain, I guess. There we go. Item 13 passes 5 votes to 0. Again, Ms. Morales, thank you for your continued extra duties.
Honored to serve. Thank you.
Very good. And thank you all for attending. It's 6:22 and this meeting is adjourned.